$1 trillion. That's the number 1 followed by 12 zeros. In 2008, while the world watched banks collapse and families lose their homes, something else happened. Something they never told you about. Over $1 trillion simply vanished. Not stolen. Not lost in bad trades. Not evaporated in the housing crash. It disappeared through a mechanism so sophisticated that most bankers didn't even know it was happening. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. The people who discovered it were silenced. The documents were sealed. The investigation was shut down. And the banks? They walked away richer than ever. Until a whistleblower broke their silence. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you the biggest financial cover-up of the 21st century. On September 15, 2008, the fourth largest bank in the United States evaporated. 158 years of history, wiped out in 24 hours. $639 billion in assets, gone. And the most insane part? The same executives who destroyed the global economy earned million-dollar bonuses while 8.7 million Americans lost their jobs. This is the story of how Wall Street turned the American dream into toilet paper, sold that toilet paper worldwide, and then asked you to pay the cleaning bill. The United States, early 2000s. A country where homeownership was synonymous with success, and credit was easier to get than a prescription. The loan officer smiles, "Congratulations, you've been approved. But I didn't even fill out the whole application." You don't need to. Everyone deserves a home. Even dogs were getting mortgages. Literally. Most millennials at 25 were renting apartments. Their parents? They were buying their third house for investment. And no one asked, who is going to pay for this? It all started with good intentions. Or so it seemed. After the 9/11 attacks, Alan Greenspan, then Federal Reserve Chair, said, "We'll cut interest rates to stimulate the economy." Rates fell from 6.5% to a stunning 1%. Money became cheaper than bottled water. And when money is cheap, everyone wants a piece. Especially the banks. Next stop, subprime. No down payment? No problem. No proof of income? Relax. No credit history? Even better. It was predatory, it was irresponsible, but surprisingly lucrative. Millions of mortgages approved without real scrutiny, just signatures collected like trading cards. Then came 2004. The Fed started raising rates back up. From 1% to 5.25% in 2 years. Millions of families who could barely afford the low rates were now facing doubled payments. But in the wreckage of that time bomb, Wall Street discovered its superpower: you can sell risk as if it were safety. The product didn't matter. Rotten mortgages, bad car loans, credit card debt. They could sell anything. And just like that, the financial destruction machine was born. Wall Street didn't need better clients. It needed a sexier product. Enter mortgage securitization. The offices of the big banks, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers, smelled of expensive coffee, the sound of Bloomberg terminals chiming. It was the golden age of wild capitalism. They learned to take 1,000 individual mortgages and package them into a single sellable product. But suddenly, no one wanted to buy debt from people who couldn't pay. Wall Street saw something else, an opportunity. They found the credit rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, Fitch. Here's how it worked: you take 1,000 subprime mortgages. Absolute garbage that no serious investor would touch. But here's the magic: you package it all together, slice it into tranches, and magically, 80% receives a AAA rating, the same as US government bonds. Look, I know this guy owes $300,000, but when you mix him with 999 other potential defaulters and add a math formula no one understands, it suddenly becomes a great investment. Trust me. And investors did trust them. Fundos de Pensão bought it. Foreign governments bought it. Their own banks bought and resold it. How did this get past the rating agencies? Simple, the banks paid the agencies to rate their own products. It's like paying the teacher to grade your own exam. And just like that, Wall Street sold billions in products they knew were bombs. No real regulation, no transparency, no brakes. Just fat commissions and pure adrenaline. They had found their kingdom. And they were ready to explode the global financial system. Wall Street was already printing money with invisible ink. And this time, they had a perfect partner. Enter the insurance companies, especially AIG, a 90-year-old giant with a pristine reputation and the instincts of a casino addict. AIG brought the illusion of security. Together, they were a financial atom bomb. Wall Street had the toxic products. AIG provided the illusion of safety. And from that lethal combination, they built their empire. Credit default swaps, CDS. The name sounded sophisticated, but in reality, it was casino betting dressed up as a financial instrument. Here's how it worked. You buy an MBS, that trash mortgage package. Then you buy a CDS, basically insurance that says, if those mortgages fail, you pay me. But here's the trick. Anyone could buy that insurance, even without owning the original asset. It was like taking out fire insurance on your neighbor's house and hoping it burns down. Then came the exponential multiplication. Wall Street developed a method called CDO squared. A perverse feedback loop designed to transform $1 of real risk into $10 of financial products. They taught them to take bad CDOs, package them up again with other bad CDOs, get the AAA rating again, and resell them as new. Soon, the market hit a rhythm, fast, opaque, addictive. Phones never stopped ringing. Deals were closing. Bonuses exploding. Egos swelled. But the genius of this scheme wasn't just how it sold. It was WHO it sold to. They targeted the trusting, teachers and nurses' pension funds, municipal governments looking for extra yield, even small European banks, institutions that trusted the system. Wall Street sold safety, wrapped in complexity, dressed in AAA approval, backed by math models no one understood. At first, it was just subprime residential mortgages. But when the money started flowing, the schemes evolved. Now it wasn't just bad mortgages. It was commercial loans, student debt, car leases. They bought up every debt that existed, packaged it into bonds, and the office became a global distribution machine. Mortgage approved. Packaged in MBS. Sliced into CDO. Insured with CDS. AAA rating stamped. Sold to Norway. And the cycle repeated. Leaving millions holding the risk without knowing it. It was called financial innovation. But on Wall Street, it was called just another Tuesday. By 2006 to 2007, Wall Street had exploded. It wasn't just about making money. It was a cult of wealth. The offices, a blur of flashing Bloomberg screens, shouting traders, $1,000 champagne bottles, and Armani suits. The banks built a system where profit was God and doubt was heresy. Top performers were treated like demigods. $10 million bonuses in a check. Ferraris in the garage. Questioners were fired, ridiculed, blackballed from the industry. Then came the parties. $5,000 a head dinners. Private jets to Vegas. Nothing was sacred. Not human dignity, not ethics, not common sense. The CEOs became cult leaders. Dick Fuld, Lehman's CEO, was called the gorilla, known for punching walls when angry. He preached, Lehman is invincible. We are the best. On paper, the banks were thriving. Lehman Brothers reported a record $4.2 billion profit in 2007. The financial industry controlled 40% of all American corporate profits. But beneath the surface, it was all smoke and mirrors. Because when you can't sell real products, you sell complexity. And Wall Street had built an empire doing exactly that. By 2007, the housing market was ablaze. Homeowners started defaulting. First a trickle, then a torrent. Foreclosures spiked. And suddenly, those triple-A rated MBS started defaulting. S&P and Moody's began downgrading thousands of bonds. From AAA to junk in weeks. Complaints exploded from investors who bought safe investments now worth pennies on the dollar. Internally, some traders started asking questions. Wait, if these MBS are 80% subprime, and subprime is failing at 20%, what is this really worth? Management's answer? Shut up or you're fired. We have models. We have PhDs. Trust the system. And while panic grew, so did the desperation to hide the losses. Creative accounting became the norm. Lehman used Repo 105, a trick to temporarily move $50 billion off the balance sheet. The executives called it perception management. The SEC eventually called it fraud. Inside the banks, the panic was no longer silent, traders vomiting from stress. Emergency meetings at 3 a.m. Executives screaming. Frantic calls trying to sell rotten positions. And no one would buy. And the CEOs? They were crumbling. Jimmy Kane, Bear Stearns' CEO, was playing bridge as his bank collapsed. Then came March 2008. Bear Stearns, a Wall Street pillar, started the week worth $60 a share. Sunday night, JP Morgan bought the wreckage for $2 a share, less than the value of the building. Bear Stearns died in 5 days. But something in the system died too. Back on Wall Street, the walls were closing in on everyone. Journalists were investigating exposures. Investors were suing for fraud. Rating agencies were finally doing the job they should have done years ago. Enter Hank Paulson, Treasury Secretary and former Goldman Sachs CEO. He silently began preparing for collapse scenarios. Lehman had $600 billion in assets, but only $25 billion in real capital. AIG was holding trillions in CDS it couldn't pay. Paulson knew what it meant: global domino effect. Wall Street also knew, eventually. What Paulson didn't know: some of the biggest investors had turned against the system. Michael Burry bought CDS against subprime when everyone thought he was crazy. They didn't have insider info, they just read the prospectuses. And as their bets paid off, the panic accelerated. Then came September 15, 2008. The day the financial world stopped. Lehman Brothers, 158 years of history, filed the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. $639 billion in assets evaporated. 25,000 employees were jobless in minutes. Global markets were in freefall. The Dow Jones plummeted 504 points. Hours later, Merrill Lynch was sold to Bank of America for $50 billion. The next day, AIG begged for an $85 billion bailout. And the Federal Reserve, which let Lehman die, saved AIG. Why? Because AIG held CDS for banks worldwide. If it fell, it would take down Goldman, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, everyone. That single collapse became the thread that unraveled the global financial system. The hunt was over. And the crash had begun. By the end of September 2008, Wall Street was in survival mode. The federal government had everything: evidence of fraud, rating manipulation, fraudulent sales. The empire they built on unrestrained greed had finally collapsed. And now it was the real economy's turn to pay. The crisis spread like a virus. 8.7 million Americans lost jobs. 10 million lost their homes. Retirement savings were decimated. Then Wall Street did what it always does: it asked for help. Not accountability, but a bailout. Paulson proposed the TARP, $700 billion in taxpayer money to buy toxic assets. Banks that caused the collapse were now getting government checks. $182 billion for AIG. $45 billion for Bank of America. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, everyone lined up. Institutions that preached the free market accepted corporate socialism. Executives? They walked away with golden parachutes. Lehman's Dick Fuld took $480 million in compensation in the years before the collapse. Merrill Lynch's Stan O'Neill was fired with a $161 million package. Wall Street? Paid $18.4 billion in bonuses in 2008. With bailout money. In 2009, the executives were called before Congress. Not to be arrested. To explain. Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs, with an arrogance only billions can buy, said, "We are doing God's work." No. They were doing the devil's work and charging a commission. No one accepted real blame. And the public? They wanted blood. Protests erupted. Occupy Wall Street put thousands in the streets. The slogan was simple: we are the 99%. Because while ordinary people lost everything, Wall Street was back to profit by 2009. But what about justice? By 2015, 6 years later, only one senior Wall Street executive went to jail. One. No CEO. None of the architects of the collapse. Instead, the banks paid fines. Bank of America, $16.6 billion. JP Morgan, $13 billion. Goldman Sachs, $5 billion. Sound like a lot? They made it back in a quarter. These fines were the cost of doing business, tax deductible. The families who lost their homes? They were left with foreclosures, ruined credit, and generational financial trauma. They were left with nothing. The court ordered the banks to pay restitution. To this day, most victims have received cents on the dollar. The rest? It evaporated in legal settlements and administrative fees. They claim they learned their lesson. The system is safer now. But Wall Street? It's better than ever. The same banks are bigger now than in 2008. Too big to fail became too big to prosecute. And the regulators? Many went to work for Wall Street. They didn't just break the economy. They got away with it. They turned fraud into fines. They turned collapse into a bailout. They turned crimes into errors in judgment. And perhaps the scariest part? The system continues. Greed is good, Gordon Gekko said in the movie Wall Street. Real Wall Street proved that greed isn't just good, it's profitable, safe, and consequence-free. Maybe that's why nothing has truly changed. Because deep down, the system was designed this way. Privatize profits. Socialize losses. Repeat. This story raises uncomfortable questions. Do we live in a capitalist society or a kleptocracy? The 2008 crisis wasn't a bug in the system. It was a feature. A built-in resource that allows the powerful to bet everything, knowing that if they lose, you pay the bill. And the only lesson Wall Street learned was, it was worth it. And they'll be right. Because we let them. If this story made you angry, you're not alone. Let me know in the comments, was the 2008 crisis a system failure or organized crime? And if you want more stories of economic collapses that change the world, subscribe and hit the bell. Because the next crisis? It's already being built. Crypto, student debt, the housing bubble in China, pick your poison. And when it explodes, remember who warned you. See you next time.